states go their own way on implementing the government's roadmap to recovery as pressure mounts to reopen the economy.
One country, one direction, different speeds.
More than 20 million jobs lost in 1 month. The devastating impact of the coronavirus on the US economy reaches levels not seen since the Great Depression. Has China given the green light to an international investigation into the origins of the virus?
We'll meet again, don't know when, don't know when.
And the Queen leads muted celebrations as the UK marks 75 years since the end of World War II in Europe.
This is SBS World News with Darren Mara.
Good evening. A day after the Prime Minister laid out Australia's roadmap to recovery, pressure is mounting on states and territories to ease restrictions to help boost the economy. Some states today made fresh moves to relax their lockdowns, but New South Wales, Victoria and WA continue to hold firm. It comes as two of those states continue to record a small number of new COVID-19 cases. Elsewhere, the effects of the pandemic on the US economy have reached levels not seen since the Great Depression. There are also concerns after 2 children in the US became the first to die from a rare inflammatory syndrome linked to the virus. And there are signs China may be open to an international investigation into the origins of COVID-19. But we begin tonight with how states across Australia are responding to the government's path to recovery.
No further bidding.
Australia's biggest property market
Sold. Congratulations.
switching from online to on-site. Some real estate restrictions in New South Wales eased as of today.
And that was an auction that I don't think would have got that result had it been in an online environment.
This is the plan.
While a 3-phase plan to reopen Australia has now been detailed, New South Wales is warding off the economic pressures to open up.
Give us a break. We're just trying to make sure that you and everybody else are kept safe.
At Western Sydney's Newmarch aged care home, further tragedy. 92-year-old great-grandmother Faye Rendoth, who had tested positive for the virus, then recovered, dying overnight.
No vaccine means we are still vulnerable and we need vigilance.
Despite repeated warnings, Sydney's hotspots still attracted large crowds, shopkeepers readying for more customers.
It's been a challenge, and so we're obviously looking forward to be able to trade as normally as we can.
And there are positive signs. 5.4 million people have now downloaded the COVID Safe app, and infection rates have remained at 0.5% for the past 2 weeks.
Stage 2 will only happen if the Stage 1 lifting of restrictions is successful.
Some states are yet to enter Stage 1. Victoria waiting until Monday before its Premier will announce plans for the state.
We very clearly have one country, one direction, different speeds.
I don't think anyone wants to see these restrictions imposed for 1 day longer than is necessary. But they also don't want to see the health advice from the respecting state authorities ignored.
South Australia, though, giving its regional tourism a major reprieve. Camping and caravanning at national parks, as well as outdoor dining statewide, will be allowed from Monday.
We'll be the only jurisdiction in the entire country which will have this eased restrictions.
The ACT also relaxing restrictions. Shopping centres opening at reduced capacities. Indoor and outdoor gatherings have now been increased to 10 people.
I'm relieved that because I have a lot of customers that are saying, thank God you're here.
Tourism groups have welcomed the staggered rollout, but want domestic travel in full swing by July.
What's most important is that we get some real confidence around if that is going to be the realistic target, so that people can plan and that industry can tool up.
These are matters for each of the premiers. Now it's over to the premiers to determine their own speeds.
The Northern Territory today seeing its famous Parrap Village markets reopen after a 6-week hiatus.
It feels great!
Omar Dehen, SBS World News.
Abroad, and the US unemployment rate jumped to 14.7% in April, the highest level since the Great Depression. The world's biggest economy lost a staggering 20.5 million jobs over the month.
From the President's top economic advisor, no sugarcoating.
These are heartbreaking numbers. So, nor do I want to suggest that we have accurate forecasting models. We don't.
President Trump, upbeat, phoned into Fox News.
Those jobs will all be back, and they'll be back very soon.
His press secretary attempting a positive spin.
Yeah, you know, this president is the jobs president. This president got us to a place where we had the lowest employment rate in the history of this country.
But for those with no income,
We haven't gotten a paycheck in 6 weeks.
February's unemployment rate of 3.5% is ancient history, and April's rate of almost 15% not the full extent of suffering, according to one Federal Reserve banker.
If you dig below the numbers, I think it's really around 22 or 23% when you consider the tens of millions who've lost their jobs. And by the way, that data is now a couple weeks old. It's probably even higher than that.
New York's governor most concerned with a different number.
This is probably the most important statistic and the most painful. 216 New Yorkers passed away yesterday. It's 216 families.
For the second day in a row, the virus lapping at the White House. The Vice President's press secretary, Katie Miller, wife of Trump immigration advisor Stephen Miller, testing positive. The president not rattled.
This is going to go away without a vaccine. It's going to go away, and we're not going to see it again, hopefully, after a period of time. You may have some flare-ups.
77,000 Americans have already died. More than 2,500 in the past 24 hours.
We may be talking about 95,000 people ultimately.
At today's death rate, that would be reached in just over a week. Today, President Trump participated in commemorations to mark the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II. But it is another time from history which is drawing comparisons. The breadlines of the Great Depression.
Have a good day.
Charity workers on Long Island, New York, astonished.
It's never been like this.
As the queues of the hungry and needy line up in modern America. Prue the One, SBS World News.
And US stock markets have gained after data showed the economy lost fewer jobs in April than feared due to the coronavirus crisis. Italy has become the third country in the world to record 30,000 coronavirus deaths. The grim milestone was passed overnight, and it comes despite the number of daily cases edging slightly lower. Italy's death toll now stands at 30,201, with more than 217,000 confirmed cases. Only the United States and Britain have seen more deaths from the virus. Globally, total confirmed coronavirus cases have passed 3.9 million, with almost 275,000 deaths. Strict new quarantine measures may be imposed in the UK in a bid to prevent a second wave of coronavirus infections. The move could be announced on Monday when Prime Minister Boris Johnson unveils his roadmap out of the UK's lockdown. But already his government is warning there'll be no dramatic changes to social distancing restrictions. Britain's death toll stands at 31,316. That's up by 626 fatalities in a day from more than 212,000 cases.
From the end of this month, everyone entering the UK may be required to self-isolate for 14 days. Visitors and returning British citizens would go into quarantine, but with exemptions for people from the Republic of Ireland, truck drivers and other key workers. UK airlines are being briefed about the plan, with some in the aviation industry fearing it will have a devastating impact. But there are concerns too that Britain kept letting people in, even as its coronavirus death rate soared to among the worst in Europe. Many countries began quarantining arrivals in early March, and some, including Australia, closed their borders. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson is due to reveal his roadmap for how the UK can start lifting its crippling lockdown. Expectations have been raised, with many in Britain hoping for some clarity on a way out of the crisis.
We had hoped there would be a bit more loosening and maybe more of a timeline.
It's not clear it's not clear. And now it's even less clear because they're sort of giving us hope and yet saying it's not going to be that easy.
High hopes are diminishing, with the government now hosing down expectations.
We have to be realistic that there isn't going to be any dramatic overnight change. We will be very, very cautious as we loosen the restrictions we have. As the data that we're outlining on a daily basis shows, we are not out of the woods.
What's becoming clearer is that different parts of the UK will ease restrictions at their own pace, depending on local conditions, with Scotland's First Minister warning against relaxing the lockdown too soon.
The 4 UK nations may well move at different speeds if our data about the spread of the virus says that that is necessary to suppress it.
Boris Johnson's highly anticipated speech on Monday may provide some answers and some relief, even if new quarantine restrictions are imposed while others are eased. Vesna Nazor, SBS World News.
The Queen has praised Britain's response to the coronavirus epidemic, saying empty streets have been filled with love. She was making a special address to mark the 75th anniversary of Victory in Europe Day, in which Allied forces accepted the unconditional surrender of Nazi Germany. This year, most of the continent is under some form of COVID-19 lockdown, but many still found a way to celebrate.
A cannon marks the start of 2 minutes silence on the already quiet streets of a nation under lockdown. Social distancing keeping people apart on a day that's meant to bring people together. Exactly 75 years after her father's VE Day address, the Queen made her own.
I vividly remember the jubilant scenes my sister and I witnessed with our parents and Winston Churchill from the balcony of Buckingham Palace. Today it may seem hard that we cannot mark this special anniversary as we would wish. Instead, we remember from our homes and our doorsteps. But our streets are not empty. They are filled with the love and the care that we have for each other. And when I look at our country today and see what we are willing to do to protect and support one another, I say with pride that we are still a nation those brave soldiers, sailors and airmen would recognise and admire.
Prince Charles and the Duchess of Cornwall laid a wreath at their Scottish residence. But for most Brits, the mood was anything but sombre. The nation's in need of a party, so many people held their own while keeping the required distance from neighbours.
I think it's really nice that we all came together to celebrate.
I love it. I think it's a really great way to get communities together. Obviously, we've all got social distance and everything.
Land of hope and glory.
And while veterans had to stay home, they certainly weren't alone.
Thank you all so much for doing what you've done and just being here and saying hello. Thank you all very much indeed. Thank you.
Londoners simply had to look to the skies to enjoy this unusual anniversary. This was a VE Day unlike any other, but the sacrifice of those who fought in World War II has still been remembered, and this celebration under lockdown will become part of history in itself. The British are perhaps the most fervent observers of VE Day, but it is an anniversary marked across the world, with France also yet to ease its lockdown, a scaled-back service at the Arc de Triomphe. President Emmanuel Macron relighting the flame at the tomb of the unknown soldier. German Chancellor Angela Merkel honouring victims of the war. The country's president stressing the importance of a united Europe.
Wir müssen Europa zusammenhalten. Wir müssen als Europäer denken, fühlen und handeln. Wenn wir Europa auch in und nach dieser Pandemie nicht zusammenhalten, dann erweisen wir uns des 8. Mai nicht als würdig.
President Trump visiting a World War II memorial with several veterans who chose to attend despite the risk from COVID-19. As the day came to an end, a sing-along about better times to come.
We'll meet again. Don't know where,
the perfect way to end this celebration in isolation. In London, Ben Lewis, SBS World News.
Lovely story. Coming up next, growing concerns over a rare complication from COVID-19 emerging in young children. A father and son face court over the fatal shooting of an unarmed black man. And the generous Australians opening their homes to international students left destitute by the pandemic.
Tonight at 7:30, restored to its original glory, discover the architectural jewel of France in Marie Antoinette's Secret Versailles. Then at 8:30, practice your harmonies for Les Miserables.
Greatest female entertainer of the 20th century.
She sings with all her heart, so much soul and so much spirit.
They really just wanted to know, well, what is the story of Whitney?
Uncover the truth behind one of the greatest voices in history.
She was simple. She became Whitney Houston. She was always trying to find her way back home.
We stay the same, you're beautiful.
She just wanted to escape the pressure.
The untold true story of Whitney. Tomorrow 9:20 on SBS and on demand. 5 days of grand finals. A Eurovision first hosted by Myth and Joel and an exclusive live show from Europe. Come together for a TV event like no other. Eurovision Week, Monday from 1:30 on SBS and on demand.
Unlike most modems, Telstra's smart modem is cleverly backed up by Australia's best 4G network. So if the connection to your house stops, your home Wi-Fi won't, giving you Australia's most reliable home Wi-Fi. To experience better Wi-Fi, visit telstra.com today.
We're pregnant! Did someone say KFC?
I don't care. I love it.
And I get 5 years cap price servicing with my new Corolla.
Well, they're impressed.
We're here to keep you moving forward. That's why our Toyota dealerships and service centres are still open. Older feeling. Toyota.
Get 50 months interest-free now at Harvey Norman. That's no deposit, no interest with 50 equal monthly payments until July 2024. Our spacious stores are open, or you can shop online from home with both click and collect and delivery available. Shop for essentials like fridges, washers, air purifiers, laptops, headphones, home office, mattresses, sofa beds and more. And take advantage of 50 months interest-free. That's no deposit, no interest with 50 equal monthly payments until July 2024. Shop in-store or shop online. Now at Harvey Norman.
Go!
Now listen to what I'm telling you. If you want to make money, there's ways to do it.
We're not drug dealers.
I saved this family. Laws are for cowards.
It's time you got into the family business.
The new series 000 starts Thursday 9:30 on SBS and on demand.
If we're going to travel together, you better keep up.
Every day at midday on SBS World Movies. Tune in for some fun for the whole family.
That was so cool! Do it again! Don't worry, I'll take good care of you.
Family Film Appreciation. Every day at midday on SBS World Movies.
China says it's open to an international investigation into the origins of the coronavirus, but that it rejects being put in the dock without evidence and with guilt assumed. It comes as the World Health Organization stressed the importance of finding the original source of COVID-19 before the first human was infected.
At the original epicentre, Wuhan, medical minds are hard at work. These pictures, released by Chinese state television, comes as the chorus calling for an international investigation into the origins of the coronavirus grows louder. China now says it's willing to be put under the microscope. We are open to an international investigation. We support the exchange of research among scientists, the Chinese ambassador to Germany told German magazine Der Spiegel. But, he added, we reject putting China in the dock without evidence, assuming its guilt and then trying to search for evidence through a so-called international investigation.
The fact that we've seen movement from China, I think that's an extremely important step forward. The world is coming together.
Pressure has been building. The European Union is scheduled to co-sponsor a draft resolution on an independent review into the pandemic at the World Health Assembly in a little over a week, while Australia has led the charge for a thorough examination.
You can't let the trail go cold.
China maintains it's been open and transparent, dismissing unproven US allegations that the virus came from a lab.
There's enormous evidence that that's where this began.
A German intelligence report casting doubts on those allegations, while scientists say it appears the coronavirus developed in nature. Beijing with this stinging assessment of the Trump administration's tactics. Who on earth is jeopardising the lives of American people? Won't the 60,000 lives be enough to awaken these US politicians' conscience and awaken them from the blame game? It's suspected COVID-19 may have originated from a wet market in Wuhan, and the WHO says finding the source before it infected humans is crucial.
If we could get hold of the virus before it adapted to humans, before the version we have now, because then we will better understand how it adapted to humans, how it evolved.
An invisible killer which continues to elude and upend the world. Virginia Lankerberg, SBS World News.
2 children, including a 5-year-old boy, have died from a rare inflammatory syndrome linked to coronavirus. Dozens of American children have been hospitalised with the condition after a number of cases were first reported in Europe.
It's a rare and new syndrome affecting children, and it's now claimed 2 young lives in America.
This is every parent's nightmare, right? That your child may actually be affected by this virus. But it's something we have to consider seriously now.
There are 73 cases in New York, more in other US states and in Europe.
We hadn't seen any children of this type until about a week, 10 days ago, when we all of a sudden received a cluster of children of this type.
Doctors are calling it Pediatric multi-system inflammatory syndrome. The symptoms include a persistent fever, rash, vomiting or diarrhoea, eye irritation, swollen lymph nodes and tongue. It's similar to Kawasaki disease, which leads to inflammation of blood vessels and can cause heart problems.
There's a standard treatment for Kawasaki that we've known for many years now and very effective. And so we're treating these children with that therapy.
When 6-year-old Nolan Garcia was admitted to hospital in Chicago, doctors thought he had Kawasaki disease, but then realised it was something else.
It is definitely an inflammatory response to the virus because all of his inflammatory markers went up. A lot of heart enzymes went up.
In some cases, the syndrome shows up weeks after a child's been exposed to COVID-19. Nolan Garcia's mum has no idea how he caught coronavirus.
We did all this social distancing. We did not do any play dates. We did not go anywhere. I just don't even know.
Australian health experts say we've had no cases here, and officials overseas maintain the syndrome is very rare.
Even in children who have had known COVID exposure or some symptoms from COVID disease, I believe it's very unlikely that they're going to develop this.
Doctors still believe that most children with COVID-19 will experience just a mild case. Felicity Davey, SBS World News.
Indonesian authorities have confirmed the conditional resumption of flights and public transport. The decision comes 2 weeks after the country banned air and sea travel until the end of May. Travel exemptions will now apply to security, defence and health service personnel, migrant workers and those with emergency health needs. They will be allowed to travel only if they have tested negative to the virus. The federal government has confirmed more than 300,000 Australians and permanent residents have returned from overseas since it recommended that people reconsider their need to travel internationally in January. Foreign Affairs Minister Marise Payne said in a statement that 16,500 repatriations were facilitated from areas where commercial travel was not available. The figure includes 6,500 people returned from cruise ships around the world. Another Qantas flight has tonight departed New Delhi, one of 4 additional flights from India due in the next few weeks. And a mammoth repatriation drive is also underway in India, where registrations for those wanting to come home have topped 300,000 in the Middle East alone. Neha Punia joins us now live from Delhi. And Neha, 8 flights from 7 countries are expected to land in India today as part of the repatriation mission. It's a mammoth undertaking. What can you tell us?
That's right. The Indian government is calling this the largest peacetime evacuation mission done anytime, anywhere in world history. Over the course of the next 1 week, the Indian government is going to evacuate 15,000 Indian nationals stranded abroad from 12 countries using 64 flights and many naval ships. This is just a fraction of the number of people who actually want to come back. For example, in the UAE alone, about 200,000 Indians have registered to come back to India, but the government says its total figure, the number of Indians it hopes to evacuate over the course of the next 1 month, will be 200,000. But of course, since there is such a long waiting list, the government says it's prioritizing those who've lost their jobs, pregnant women, senior citizens, and anyone who has a medical emergency, and everyone who's being brought back, including those hundreds of Indian nationals who will arrive in Delhi and other parts of the country on Saturday, will be quarantined for 14 days, either at home or in institutional quarantines. An interesting fact is also that India is taking many students and foreign nationals on these outbound flights, especially if they've got to join university immediately or if their visas are about to expire.
And Neha, we understand that not everyone is able to return home.
That's right. The Indian government is receiving a lot of flack for treating people who are stranded abroad differently from how migrant laborers are being treated here at home. Here you have chartered flights bringing back thousands of Indian nationals who are stranded abroad, something that the government is being praised for. But at the same time, you have 1.4 million migrant laborers who were stranded in various Indian cities back in March when that lockdown was first announced. Over the last 1 week, the government has said that trains will ferry many of these migrant laborers back, but there's not enough space for all of them on these trains. There was a heartbreaking incident earlier this week where 16 migrant laborers were run over by a train. They'd been walking for days and they slept on train tracks, exhausted, and police saying that they were run over because they assumed that trains weren't running because of this lockdown. So these kind of stories are coming to light from different parts of the country. And the government being accused of treating the privileged who are stranded abroad differently from how poor Indians are stuck in cities like Delhi and Mumbai here in India.
OK, thank you for the update. Neha Punia there from Delhi. With federal parliament returning next week, Labor has reignited its attacks on the government's so-called sports rorts scheme. Anthony Albanese accusing Scott Morrison of misleading Parliament after new evidence was presented to a Senate inquiry into the now infamous colour-coded spreadsheets.
Campaigning amid the coronavirus crisis.
Oh, we can't do that.
Sanitizer and socially distanced selfies in Eden Monero.
We've got to be a little bit distant.
As Anthony Albanese puts the boot into Scott Morrison over the so-called sports rorts.
This is a $100 million scandal that goes straight to the Prime Minister himself.
Having told Parliament in February
there was no authorisation provided by me as Prime Minister on the projects.
The Audit Office has now told a Senate inquiry the Prime Minister's office had advised the Minister's office that it was expected that the Minister would write to the Prime Minister to seek authority on the approved projects and inform the Prime Minister of the rollout plan. The Prime Minister's office also requested that the rollout gets coordinated in conjunction with campaign headquarters. Bridget McKenzie has told the inquiry she was not responsible for 11 changes to the final list of recipients after the election had been called. I reiterate that I did not make any changes or annotations to this document or its attachments.
Scott Morrison was in it up to his neck.
A spokesperson telling SBS World News it's normal practice for ministers to engage with the Prime Minister's staff about the announcement of government programs, as Labor prepares to step up its scrutiny of the scheme when Parliament resumes next week.
We are very keen to have Senator McKenzie appear before us.
In what was meant to be Budget Week, the Treasurer will instead deliver an economic statement, setting out the grim reality of the COVID-19 crisis, as Labor and the Greens call for the stimulus package to go even further.
Quite clearly, the idea of snapback is just not going to happen.
Even if the politics of politics has in the nation's capital. Brett Mason, SBS World News.
The federal government has released the source code for its COVID-safe tracking application, allowing any member of the public to ensure it works as advertised. It follows widespread calls for public access prompted by privacy concerns. The government's Digital Transformation Agency says the app was reviewed by security agencies, academics and industry specialists prior to release. Scammers posing as the Australian Taxation Office have had their calls blocked in a joint operation between the federal government, telco companies and the National Communication Regulator. The scammers used software to make their calls appear to be coming from legitimate tax office phone numbers. During the 3-month trial, telcos identified the spoof calls and prevented them. Last year, the ATO received more than 107,000 reports of impersonation scams. Queensland's Deputy Premier has stood down from her ministerial duties because of a corruption probe. Jackie Trad, who was also the Treasurer and Minister for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Partnerships, is being investigated by the Crime and Corruption Commission over the recruitment and election process of a high school principal in her electorate. The case was referred to the CCC last year by the state opposition. Ms Trad denies any wrongdoing.
I will cooperate fully with this investigation. It will provide me with an opportunity to set the record straight on this matter.
Queensland's Premier, Anastasia Palaszczuk, will assume Jackie Trad's ministerial duties until further notice. There's been a huge increase in the number of domestic violence victims ending up in hospital during the coronavirus pandemic. Cases have doubled in Victoria, and police checks have detected more than 700 offences there in just a month. A multilingual campaign has been launched to combat the alarming surge.
A graphic message to highlight a scourge in society, graphically exposed by Australia's COVID-19 lockdown.
Staying at home is hard, but it's not a good reason. There's never a good reason for abuse.
The Victorian government's Respect Each Other campaign urges victims and bystanders alike to call out family violence.
That might be neighbours or those who are encountering incidents that don't feel right to them. It's giving them some guidance on what they can do to assist.
A message designed to span the cultural and linguistic spectrum.
There's 6 languages that it will be running on radio. It will also be appearing on SBS and SBS On Demand, as well as and translated on Facebook as well. It's hugely important to make sure that this message reaches as many in our community as we possibly can.
It follows the federal government's launch this week of a national awareness campaign for people experiencing violence to ensure they know where to get help during the pandemic. The evidence of an upsurge since the lockdown began is all too telling.
People do feel trapped. People are feeling triggered by living in a household, and they're also some people are not safe because they're living in an environment with someone or being socially isolated in an environment with someone who chooses to use violence.
With an increase in victims presenting to emergency departments. St Vincent's, one of Melbourne's biggest hospitals, has reported a doubling in family violence-related presentations this year, while almost 2,500 police checks on homes in the past month have identified more than 780 offences being committed. The Chief Commissioner says more resources have been devoted to tackling family violence in the lockdown because there's less crime elsewhere.
We've just
detected over 100 cases where we've had charges and remands in relation to criminal offending. So the offending has been of such a nature that we've actually sought remanding of the offenders in custody.
Highlighting the danger faced by all too many in the supposed safety of their own home. Gareth Boreham, SBS World News.
US President Donald Trump has called the fatal shooting of an unarmed black man in the state of Georgia heartbreaking. Ahmaud Arbery was out jogging at the time. A white father and son faced court today charged with his murder. The case was thrust into the national spotlight after a video was released online allegedly showing the daylight attack.
Gregory McMichael and his son Travis McMichael have been charged with felony murder and aggravated assault over the shooting death of 25-year-old Ahmaud Arbery 2 months ago. The football player was out jogging on a Sunday afternoon when he was confronted by the duo.
Go jump on the back of a truck and follow him and slaughter him like that, that's lynching.
According to a Glenn County police report, 64-year-old Gregory McMichael told officers Arbery looks like someone he believed to be behind recent break-ins in the area. And on the same afternoon, there was this 911 call.
911, what's the address of emergency?
I'm out here at Satilla Shores. There's a black male running down the street.
Satilla, where at Satilla Shores?
I don't know what street we're on. Stop right there! Stop!
But Arbery's family and this group of protesters argued the 25-year-old was shot because he was black.
No justice! No peace!
Protesters were brought out onto the streets this week despite the COVID-19 lockdown after a video emerged on social media of the alleged daylight shooting. Their anger further fueled by the delays after 2 local prosecutors recused themselves of the investigation due to links with the older McMichael, who was a retired police officer.
This is a cover-up.
State investigators took over the case and within 36 hours arrested the father and son.
I'm very comfortable in telling you that there's more than sufficient probable cause in this case for felony murder.
Appearing by phone on News Channel Fox, President Trump says footage of the alleged attack is disturbing.
I looked at a picture of that young man. He was in a tuxedo. And I will say that looks like a really good young guy. And it's a very disturbing situation.
The man who filmed this video is also under investigation. Lucy Murray, SBS World News.
Well, the Prime Minister of Armenia has condemned the actions of politicians who engaged in a bizarre parliamentary floor brawl. Scuffles erupted when the chairman of the opposition was slapped by a government minister after delivering a speech. The scene descended into a wild melee between dozens of members, forcing the cancellation of the session. Well, during this health crisis, hundreds of Australian families are opening up their homes to some of the thousands of international students facing financial hardship and homelessness. A discounted short-term homestay scheme has just started, with predictions of tough times ahead for many.
Good morning. Welcome to our home. Come in.
It's not the first time Rosa Marie is opening her door to international students. She's been doing it for 30 years.
There's this room. Some nice cupboards.
Now she's one of hundreds offering a roof to students who have lost their jobs and incomes due to the COVID-19 pandemic.
I think we need to do it, and whether there's money or not, it wouldn't matter at all to me, because even when you're getting your full host money, it doesn't actually, you don't make money out of it. This is where we eat our meals together, and we certainly welcome.
Hosts will receive $120 per week, paid for with crisis funds from educational institutions and government agencies. The usual rate is just over $300, paid in full by the students. There are about 500,000 international students in Australia, contributing almost $40 billion to the economy every year. But despite paying taxes, they're not eligible for the federal JobKeeper or Job Seeker allowance. And with no way of going home, there are fears they will become destitute and homeless. Australia's largest independent homestay provider sensed a looming crisis.
the industry and even the other government departments working in this market are really working hard to provide hardship funds for international students.
For offering the discounted homestay placements, AHN gets $40 a week for management, insurances and support services for students referred by their institutions and government agencies.
It's just starting now. We're just making our first placements now, but over the next few months, the industry is predicting thousands.
Hi, I'm Sarah Jane. Welcome to my home.
Sarah Jane is offering rooms in her home for the first time, answering the call for discounted accommodation for international students.
And then there's the office in here where there's...
The students will have been in Australia for months, so the infection risk is no different to any other tenant.
I mean, there is only so much the government can do for people, and I think where there's a gap, that's an opportunity for the community to step up and help, because that is reflective of we are in this together.
Helping those in need in extraordinary times. Stefan Armbruster, SBS World News.
For many older Australians, the decision to stay at home or move into an aged care facility is one of the hardest they'll ever make. The COVID-19 pandemic has added another dimension to the equation. The federal government recently announced support for older Australians during self-isolation at home.
Norma Hall celebrated her 85th birthday with friends via Facebook last month, staying safe and staying connected during lockdown. She hasn't yet taken up the government's offer of financial assistance for home monitoring technology because her daughter Tracy lives nearby, and she's grateful to have so much support.
I'm lucky enough to have lovely neighbours who look after me, and when Tracy's not around, I can always call on them if necessary.
According to the Department of Health, 15,400 people moved into permanent residential care homes in the last quarter of last year. The government is now encouraging older Australians to consider remaining at home for longer. And tech companies are rolling out new systems to help them do just that.
The way that technology augments care will only increase, I would say, over the next few years. And personally, I'm excited to see a big increase in all sorts of technology usage in the aged care space and, frankly, in healthcare more generally in this country.
COVID-19 clusters at aged care centres like this one in northwestern Sydney may have made the decision for older Australians to stay at home much more straightforward. As home care becomes more difficult during the pandemic, monitoring technology enables carers to know when assistance is needed.
It helps to fill in the gaps between those visits, and so it helps people to understand what's happening when I'm not there, so that I can be confident that if I'm only able to visit once a day or once every week, I know that in the intervening days things are happening the way that I would expect.
Of course I'd like to be independent. At the moment I can do everything for myself that I have to, but I can't tell what the future will be. I mean, if I had to go into a home, of course I would go in one.
Before that happens, Norma can't wait for the restrictions to ease so she can get back into the op shop where she volunteers.
I really love the op shop. So many nice people come through and enjoy what we have.
John Baldock, SBS World News.
Coming up next, the lucky new technology that led to these stunning new pictures of the largest planet in our solar system. Also, back on the field, why South Korea is providing hope for the rest of the world.
On Insight,
someone to give me a hug.
Solo sailor Jessica Watson.
My little boat was my whole world.
Explorers and experts on life after isolation.
There will be an adjustment period.
Then, on Dateline, the deadly impact of coronavirus has deepened the divide between France's rich and poor. Is this the start of the next French Revolution? Insight followed by Dateline, Tuesday from 8:30 on SBS and on demand. This may be our biggest May yet on SBS On Demand.
I'm looking for the light.
I can't do this. Has Steve been dating a lot?
He's on fire, like John Mayer on fire.
Is that more or less than DiCaprio?
More.
Wow. We're not drug dealers.
What we do keeps the world's economy afloat. Let's face it, investment banking is tot. Wir brauchen jetzt jemanden wie dich.
I'm looking for the It's a massive May on SBS On Demand.
When things change unexpectedly, we adapt. When things get complicated, we adapt. When we need to do things differently, we adapt. At Newcastle Permanent, we're adapting too, by increasing our Hunter-based call centre team to assist you and help give you some financial peace of mind. Because if one thing's certain in these uncertain times, we're here for you, and we're here for good.
You don't give in. You don't give up. You push on when most would have pushed off. You lend a hand, whether a hand was asked for or not. It's called Aussie Spirit for good reason, because it takes spirit to get through times like these. Lucky you've got it in spades. It's what inspires us to be by your side to help. Together we'll get through this. We always do. Search Toyota, here to help.
Unlike most modems, Telstra's smart modem is cleverly backed up by Australia's best 4G network. So if the connection to your house stops, your home Wi-Fi won't, giving you Australia's most reliable home Wi-Fi. To experience better Wi-Fi, visit telstra.com today.
Who Do You Think You Are is back with a heartwarming new series.
If only you could go back in time.
Join these Aussie icons in a journey of self-discovery as they venture down the roads laid by their ancestors.
So this is where it gets really exciting.
From the bustling streets of Chennai...
This is where your ancestor got married.
...to Renaissance Malta.
Incredible. What a great story.
Who Do You Think You Are starts Tuesday 19th of May on SBS and on demand.
How you feeling, Ray? I feel groovy, baby. We can change the world, Biggie Smalls.
They tried to kill James Brown today. You want to go down and hit you as a man and kill the funk?
You own my music? How much money you got on you? About 19,000 light, but that's a start.
Legends of Music starts with Ray, Monday 9:35 on SBS World Movies.
Astronomers in Hawaii have produced some of the highest resolution images of Jupiter ever captured from Earth. The Gemini North telescope captured a series of remarkable photos of the gas giant, part of a research project into Jupiter's weather systems. Using a technique called lucky imaging, researchers reduced the blurring effect associated with looking through Earth's atmosphere. The resulting clarity allowed a view beneath the planet's cloud cover and a better understanding of wind patterns, atmospheric waves and cyclones. Well, the number of children needing crisis care is predicted to surge during the COVID-19 crisis, along with a rise in family violence. On the eve of Mother's Day, Small Business Secrets meets foster mothers who've made it their business to help children at risk.
I've just taken them under my wing because I've always had that in me that I want to look after someone. I want to do something with my life.
Over the past 6 years, Samar and her husband have offered their home to 15 children in crisis, recently adopting their young son.
It was amazing. I don't even have words to describe it. It was the best feeling ever, just knowing that he's going to be with us forever.
And they hope to do the same with their foster daughter, raising these Muslim children to respect their heritage.
Do you want to salli? Yeah, salli with mama? It is really important so they don't lose their sense of identity, their sense of culture.
During Ramadan, Samar is reflecting on children she's helped.
The neglect, the trauma, the abuse, it breaks my heart. It absolutely breaks my heart. I would take 20 children if I could.
She is willing to take on 2 more, as demand for foster homes rises during the pandemic.
Every sort of week or so, there's a call for a new child coming into care, yeah.
Susan is a carer and, like older Australians, is at heightened risk of COVID-19.
88% of carers in Australia are over the age of 40, and what that means is that they are at increased risk of more severe COVID if they contract the disease.
And that's bad news for kids at risk.
At the moment, there's around 45,000 children across Australia that are in out-of-home care, and that's often due to abuse and neglect.
Carers are not paid a wage, but receive an allowance to cover costs. Experts hope those who've recently lost jobs may step up.
In times of crisis, carers are more likely to volunteer. And I think that really talks to the community's drive to support people and to step up when they see that there are families in need.
In almost 2 decades, Susan has fostered 38 children.
Thanks God you give me this job. You have to be patient and care about it, love them, show them the love.
Despite the heartbreak of saying goodbye, she says the rewards are worth it. Jennifer Scherer, SBS World News.
And if you'd like more on Australian small businesses, go online at any time. Just click on the Small Business Secrets tab on the SBS News website or at SBS On Demand. South Korea's K-League has become the first major football competition in Asia to resume during the COVID-19 pandemic. The country eased social distancing rules this week after implementing an extensive trace, test and treat program for the virus.
The start of a season like no other. It was temperature checks and not crowds that greeted Jeonbuk and Suwon as they arrived for their first match of the K-League season. Coaches and substitutes wore masks and players were instructed not to have close conversations with each other. The stadium speakers piped in artificial crowd noise. But you could only hear the screams of players when Australian midfielder Terry Antonis was sent off. The man advantage helping Jeonbuk snatch victory in the dying minutes. The full-time whistle met with silence.
Listen to that.
But with social distancing rules eased, supporters were able to gather together to watch the game.
I was disappointed as all soccer games around the world were suspended because of COVID-19. But now I feel like it quenched my thirst as I can watch the game. After watching this, I feel like my heart is beating after a long time.
South Korea's Baseball League also returned to the field last weekend. It appears life in the country is somewhat back to normal. Malls are open, so too are cinemas, while worshippers have returned to churches. Although strict regulations remain in place for people to enter.
I don't think we are saying that we are out of the woods, but I think we are just keeping it in the very low level as possible.
In February, South Korea had the largest outbreak of coronavirus outside of China. But in the space of 2 months, it's gone from averaging 645 new cases a week to just 7. So how did they achieve that? The country introduced widespread testing. Cutting-edge technology was used to trace people. Personal data was harvested from debit cards and smartphones. And every arriving international traveller was required to download a smartphone app before completing a 14-day quarantine.
We need all the tools and technology available that we can fight this disease.
But concerns remain of a second wave after 18 new cases were confirmed today. That's the highest daily rise since April 17th. Adrian Archuli, SBS World News.
Taiwan is also controlling the spread of COVID-19 with just 440 confirmed cases of the virus. The country is now allowing up to 1,000 fans to attend baseball matches. Spectators are required to undergo temperature checks, wear face masks and sit at least 1 metre apart. Australian Olympic Committee Chairman John Coates believes staging the 2032 Olympics in southeast Queensland can help boost Australia's economy after the COVID-19 pandemic. In an address at the AOC's annual general meeting today, Mr Coates said the event could be a critical part of the nation's short-term economic recovery.
The idea of this is using existing community and sporting venues and turbocharging, my words today, the economy at a time it needs it in terms of new road and rail infrastructure.
The IOC is expected to make a decision in 2022. Coming up next, the weather and final act. One half of legendary magician duo Siegfried and Roy dead at 75.
Tonight at 7:30, restored to its original glory, discover the architectural jewel of France in Marie Antoinette's Secret Versailles. Then at 8:30, practice your harmonies for Les Miserables.
I've been the guy probably
probably with the jingling pocket of change that's walked straight past someone.
Hey, bud, do you have a couple of bucks?
You don't know the story of the person sitting there.
Filthy Rich and Homeless. Coming soon to SBS and On Demand.
Now listen to what I'm telling you. If you want to make money, there's ways to do it. Laws are for cowards.
The new series 000 starts Thursday 9:30 on SBS and On Demand.
I cross the road when I want to, okay, because I'm an adult. So I just crossed the road and I walked straight into the Queensland Police and he said, "Oi, what are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm being an adult." He said, "Do you have any ID?" And I'm like, "No." Because I don't need it anymore. If I ever get asked for ID, I think, if you think I'm under 18, I am not well, just quietly.
At HCF, Australia's largest not-for-profit health fund, we know the importance of care when it counts. That's why eligible members can access our holistic mental wellbeing program with the flexibility to choose what works for you. HCF, that's uncommon care.
You don't give in, you don't give up. It's called Aussie Spirit, and it takes spirit to get through times like these. It's what inspires us to help. Together we'll get through this. Search Toyota, here to help.
At UE, we're all about how you use or don't use your car. So we're giving our clients and new clients temporary relief on their car insurance premiums if they're using their cars less right now. Go to UE.com.au. UE, you insured.
Harvey Norman has everything you need for your home. Come into our spacious stores for the best of Australian-made. Choose Australian-made timber and fabric beds and customise the fabric, colour and timber stain to suit your home. Our range features the best names in Australian-made mattresses and ensembles. Sealy, Sleepmaker, Beauty Rest, King Coil and Body Balance. Complete your sleep experience with beautiful Australian-made Manchester. Support local manufacturers and choose Australian-made. Everything you need for your home. Browse online and shop in-store. Now at Harvey Norman.
Go! SBS proudly presents a Eurovision first. 2 massive events over one huge weekend. Saturday, join Miff and Joel as we count down Australia's favourite 2020 act, decided by you, with a special performance from Montaigne. Then Sunday, we pay tribute to all our 2020 artists with an exclusive from Europe. Come together for a massive weekend, kicking off with Eurovision Big Night In, next Saturday 7:30 on SBS and On Demand. The world has changed. Working from home comes with distractions. Find your safe place. Find your chill. Listen to SBS Chill, your work from home radio station. Go to channel 39 on your TV or sbs.com.au/chill.
To the weather now. A front is bringing gusty winds, showers and storms to southern parts of the country and producing snowfall in the highlands of Victoria, New South Wales and Tasmania. A trough is generating storms over New South Wales and southern Queensland. Onshore winds in the far northern tropics are causing showers. In the major centres, a possible shower or two for Melbourne and Adelaide, partly cloudy for Brisbane, Canberra and Hobart, fine in Sydney. Looking further afield, partly cloudy in Auckland and Wellington, showers for Tahiti, Samoa and Nandi. In Southeast Asia, showers for Bangkok and Honiara, partly cloudy in Denpasar, thunderstorms expected for Kuala Lumpur and Singapore. Further north, cloudy in Beijing and Hanoi, a few showers for Hong Kong and Manila, cloudy in Tokyo, drizzly in Taipei. Heading west, clear skies in Baghdad and Jerusalem, showers for Islamabad, drizzle in Delhi, thunderstorms for Tehran. Up to Europe, cloudy in Athens and London, some rain for Rome, Paris and Moscow and Madrid, and all clear in Warsaw. Down to Africa, drizzle for Addis Ababa, a few showers for Algiers and Casablanca, thunderstorms for Lagos, all clear in Cairo and Johannesburg. To South America, partly cloudy in Buenos Aires and Asunción, showers for Bogota and Caracas, storms for Panama City, fine in Lima. And for North America, fine in New York and Vancouver, showers for Miami and Mexico City, foggy in Los Angeles. Roy Horn, one half of the famed illusionists Siegfried and Roy, has died aged 75. For decades, the pair mesmerised crowds using magic and exotic animals until an onstage tiger attack in 2003.
They took a simple magic act and turned it into one of the most successful partnerships in show business. Roy Horn of Siegfried and Roy has died 1 week after testing positive to coronavirus. Born in Germany in 1944, Horn met Siegfried Fischbacher by chance on a cruise ship. Their magic took them around the world. They opened the Siegfried and Roy show at a Las Vegas casino in 1990. Their story even became a feature film.
Siegfried and I came here about 30 years ago, the first time to America as immigrants. I had no idea this could ever happen.
That changed in 2003 on Horn's 59th birthday. He was mauled by a 400-pound white tiger and dragged off stage before a stunned crowd.
Fans have been coming out here in front of the hospital.
Physically, he never recovered. It marked the end of one of the longest-running productions in Vegas history. Though they did return in 2009 for one show. They were considered gay icons, but only confirmed their personal relationship in 2007. No longer lovers, they remained best friends.
I said, I love you. And he says, if I would have to do it again, I would do everything again the same way. I regret nothing.
Horn is survived by his brother Werner. Charlotte Lamb, SBS World News.
Recapping our top story now, a day after the unveiling of Australia's roadmap to recovery, pressure is mounting on states and territories to ease restrictions. Some states today made fresh moves to relax their lockdowns, but New South Wales, Victoria and WA continue to hold firm. And that's the world this Saturday. If you missed some of tonight's bulletin, you can catch up on the SBS News website shortly. And a reminder, you can also watch the bulletin live there or on our app. I'll be back with more updates throughout the evening. From the team, I'm Darren Mara. Good night.